Hello, good people of YouTube. Mountbatten here, and today we are taking a look back at one of the more famous premium ships in the game, and that is the Tier 6 premium British battleship, the Warspite. And the Warspite is, well, she is quite an old ship. I remember, shoot, good God, seeing videos on this ship from 5, 6 years ago now. And yes, she is one of the older premiums in the game, and she's been with us for quite some time. And of course, too, she is a real still ship. The Warspite was a real ship that existed in real life that, unfortunately, well, she survived World War II, but for tragic reasons, she was not saved as a museum ship, which, if the British were going to save any of their battleships after the war, Warspite would have definitely been the one to save, but unfortunately that didn't happen, and Warspite is no longer with us. But yes, released all the way back on June 30th of 2015. Quite an old girl, isn't she now? So like we've done in this series before, we're going to take a look at the Warspite, look at her stats, and we're going to look at how she performs in-game, and if she is still a ship that you guys should consider picking up if you're in the market for a Tier 6 premium British battleship. Right now, you can buy Warspite in the premium shop outright for $27 US, and that's, I mean, considering how much some other premiums are on this game, that's actually not a terrible price for a premium ship. Of course, it is a Tier 6 ship, and we'll talk about her tier here in a moment. So I am running my standard, well, not even British, my standard battleship build on the Warspite. The only thing I don't have on this commander is basics of survivability. I don't have a 21-point British battleship commander just yet. That's what I'm working on this guy with, but that's the only thing that's missing from this build. And the stats that I'm going to read off on the Warspite is with the selected modules and commander skills equipped. You guys should have just seen it popped up on screen. Throw it up right again here anyway for you. Alright, so let's talk about the armor on the Warspite. The Warspite is, well, she is a super dreadnought, and she is, well, quite bulky. She is quite the chonker. She's actually pretty darn decently well armored. Again, being a super dreadnought and all, you have a 26mm bow. Upper deck is 26 millimeters. Main deck in the middle is 26 as well. The aircraft catapult deck is 26 as well. Deck around the number 3 and 4 turrets is actually 38 millimeters. And then we have another 26 millimeter stern deck. Stern is 26 millimeters as well. You do have a 102 millimeter plate around the stern. Upper belt is 152 millimeters, and her main belt is 330 millimeters. And her citadel is just below the waterline, on top of just an absolute crap ton of armor. You probably aren't going to get citadeled in the Warspite unless some pretty wonky stuff happens. Like that 38mm section of deck that I talked about just a few seconds ago. If you somehow get through there, you can get to the citadel that way. So at extremely long ranges with some very large caliber guns, you can potentially get through. But in the standard Tier 6 battleship engagement, that is probably not going to happen with the Warspite. So it's a pretty darn tanky ship, and surprisingly too, she is quite maneuverable, which is very weird for a Tier 6 battleship. Tier 6 battleships are, they're normally quite slow, and they take normally forever to turn. So that's quite weird seeing this ship be not only pretty darn maneuverable when it comes to its rudder, it's also pretty darn quick. 24.7 knots, which is, a darn sight faster than the American battleships. She's the fastest Tier 6 battleship, no, but it's a quite comfortable speed for Tier 6. She has a 550-meter turning circle radius, and her rudder shift time is 14.2 seconds. So, yeah, pretty darn maneuverable Tier 6 battleship here. But anyway, getting sidetracked to there. Her survivability, she has 53,800 hit points, so 53,800. That's about normal for tier 6. It's not at the top, but not at the bottom either. And do keep this in mind as well. The Warspite came out before the British Battleship line, so this is before all their gimmicks are really well developed. Where they, when you start getting up to the higher tiers, they have less HP than their counterparts. Ironically, though, the Queen Elizabeth does have more HP than the Warspite, but there's a pretty good reason for that, which we'll get into here in a moment. But yeah, decent amount of hit points. 22% torpedo damage reduction, which is pretty decent for tier 6. I mean, shoot half the side of the Warspite's freaking torpedo protection. Main battery guns. This is where the good stuff is. So you get 8 15-inch guns, 381 millimeters for you Europeans. They reload in 30 seconds. You have a 43.6 second 180 time with the commander skill equipped, the grease the gear skill, which is still quite long with the commander skill equipped. Maximum dispersion with a range mod with the dispersion mod on of 204 meters. She has a maximum base range of 16.3 kilometers. Her HE shells do a maximum damage of 5,300, which is about 1,000 less than the HE of the Queen Elizabeth. But again, this is way before the British BBs were a thing, so there you go with that. A 34% chance of causing a fire per shell, which is pretty decent. You have 64 millimeters of HE pin. Initial velocity on the HE shells of 732 meters a second. AP shells do a maximum damage of 11,400. They have initial velocity of 732 meters a second. So these guns also have 2.0 Sigma. Yeah, 2.0 Sigma on a tier 6 battleship with 15-inch guns. 15-inch guns, if you don't know, can pretty much overmatch every battleship you can see at your tier and below. Not so much above, but everything you can see and below, you can overmatch them, which is freaking nice. And they're accurate too, and they only have a 30-second reload time. So you have the ability to just not care about armor, really, in most cases, at tier 6, with a 30-second reload time, with accurate guns, with 2.0 Sigma, and a pretty darn good dispersion. Yeah, this is Warspite's strong suit. She's a great mid-range and even long-range sniping, long-range by tier 6 standards. She's great at that with these accurate 15-inch guns. And if needed to, she can push in as well, because like we've already covered, her armor is pretty darn decent for what it is. Now, you can't, of course, overmatch yourself, so if you run across another Warspite or another Queen Elizabeth, they can overmatch you. The Bayern can do that too, but the Bayern's guns are nowhere near this accurate. That we all know. So this is definitely one of the highlights of the Warspite, the ability to just blap enemy battleships through the nose like you don't care, because you don't. Alright, secondary guns, you get 8 of the 102mm deck guns, and then 8 of the 152 millimeter. God, what? I can never remember the name of these. The ones that are on the side. You guys have told me like 20 times what they are. But you get 8 of those, and then 8 of the 102s. Warspite's not really a secondary battleship. You can do it for the memes, and it'll work okay-ish, but definitely not the way the ship is meant to be played. I used to do it back in the day, and it doesn't really work that well, especially today. Hey, you have an A rating of 50? It's nothing special. Definitely nothing to write home about, especially in today's World of Warships. You'll take a plane or two away from a tier 6 CV, but that's about it. When you see tier 8 ones, good luck. We are talking about her maneuverability. Concealment, she's detectable by sea from 12.4 kilometers with the commander's skill equipped, and that's as low as you can get it. Of course, I do have a camouflage on the ship as well, as it does come with one. Alright, so her equipment, you get HE and AP. It's standard BB-HE and standard BB-AP. There's no short fuse time like the British mainline battleships, and it's not the special British BB-HE like the mainline British battleships either. So yeah, none of those gimmicks here. Damage con. Damage con is pretty unique. It's essentially a cruiser damage con, short durations, active for 5.5 seconds, and it cooldowns in 57 seconds, which is really nice. It's a really quick cooldown time on a damage con for a battleship. The hill is where we get another high point of the Warspite. You will hear me refer to improved heals when we're reviewing ships as Warspite heals. Warspite was, I do believe, the first ship added to the game that had this improved heal, where you recover a significant, much more significant amount of HP per second. So you get 387 hit points back per second. It's active for 30.8 seconds, reloads in 76 seconds, and you get 5 charges of that if you have Superintendent on. And you get Spotter. There's no choice of Spotter or Fighter, it's just Spotter. Alright, so that's the stats and the characteristics of Warspite. So, this ship in today's World of Warships is still a beast. She's still quite potent, especially when she's top tier like the match you're watching right now. Now, the match you're watching right now is an absolute best case scenario for the Warspite. Well, there are CVs involved, but I mean, as you'll see, the CV doesn't really bother me too much. I must say, Warspite, with the updated graphics and water physics and all, she looks beautiful in this game. There's something about British battleships, I just love the way that they're designed. Warspite's no exception here. They're probably the second prettiest battleships in the game next to the American battleships, in my opinion. But she's still quite the beast in this game. 15-inch guns. The ability to just punch through pretty much every single other Tier 6 battleship's nose is, of course, fantastic. You know, that's something that she has that hasn't been gimmicked away or taken away from her or anything like that. So you can still do that easy peasy lemon squeezy. And her guns, they're just as accurate as they've always been. That hasn't been taken away either. And again, like, look at some of this dispersion that I'm getting out of this ship. This is a Tier 6 ship. There's Tier 10 battleships that don't get dispersion this good. And you get this at Tier 10. So if your aim's good, you got it. You really do. It did take me a couple of matches to get reacclimated to her shells, though. You know, I play a lot of Tier 8 and Tier 10. Well, Tier 8, 9, and 10. So coming back down to Tier 6 and having to play with some slower shells, it takes a couple of matches to get used to that. But yeah, that's still fantastic about her. Her heal is still great. It saves you a lot. And that means, you know, with the good accurate guns, the improved heal, this is a Tier 6 battleship that up tiers really well for a Tier 6 battleship. The jump from Tier 6 to Tier 8 in terms of the power is one of the probably the worst double up tiers you can get in the game. Even more so than from Tier 8 to Tier 10. Tier 6 to Tier 8 is, whoa, that's a rough one. But the Warspite can still hang in there for a couple reasons. One, her guns are really darn accurate. When you do pop the spotter, you have decent-ish range. It goes out to, I believe, 19.3-ish kilometers when you pop that spotter. So that's decent enough to where you can still hang in there in Tier 8 games while that spotter is up. And the guns are more than accurate enough to where you can get your shots in and get good damage. And plus, when you get up to Tier 8 like that, you are getting a boost to your income when you are doing damage to Tier 8 ships. And you still have 15-inch guns. 15-inch guns with good AP pins. That's fantastic. And you have decent HE if you need to switch over and spam it. It's only a little bit weaker than the Queen Elizabeth's HE, so you got that going for you as well. But again, 15-inch guns at Tier 8, that's no joking matter. Maneuverability, like I've said, her turning circle is fantastic. That will save you a lot, especially in CV games. And anytime a cruiser or DD thinks they have you with their torpedoes, if you're paying attention to what they're doing and when it's pretty obvious that they're dropping, like if they're selling broadside to you and they're not shooting, they are dropping torpedoes. So you can turn into them and absolutely ruin their day because of that. Now the armor with some of the new ships that have been introduced since I've talked about Warspite, which is forever ago. There's some ships, you know, we've got some ships with some pretty crazy AP shells, like the Russian battleships, Russian cruisers and stuff, that she can see now. And yeah, that hurts a bit more with her armor, but that heal's still there to back you up on that. So her survivability is still really freaking good for a Tier 6 battleship. Again, that heal's really helping her out, and that fast cooldown time on the damage con. Now, the damage con is only active for 5.5 seconds, which is ridiculously fast by even, well, other battleship standards. Most battleships, for a fast quote-unquote damage con, it's like 10 seconds. But Warspite's 5.5 second damage con, it's pretty fast, but it does also come off a cooldown fast, so you do have the ability to turn around and try to get yourself out of that situation, and your damage con will be off a cooldown pretty quickly. And with how maneuverable the ship is, turning around isn't really a big issue. But because of how chunky the ship is too, you probably will eat some pretty good chunks when you are turning to disengage. But if you're smart about it and time it right, you can minimize the damage and get out of there pretty darn fast as well. So overall, the Warspite's still a really, really, really good Tier 6 premium. Like, her guns are easily the best, like the absolute best Tier 6 battleship guns in terms of their accuracy and their reliability and their ability to do damage. And she's still up tiers pretty well. She's still up tiers pretty darn well today. Definitely not as well as she used to, with, of course, more and more CVs being added in and her 50 AA rating. That does hurt a bit now when you get up tiered and you get, you know, some pretty crazy tier 8 CVs like the freaking Torpedoes now, and the Russian CVs, and even the German CVs, of course, too. But, I mean, in most cases, with the maneuverability, you can mitigate those quite easily, but she's still a really good ship. If you're looking to pick her up, I would still highly recommend her. When there's competitive modes at tier 6, be it ranked or clan battles, Warspite's an absolute must-have because of the guns. So if you're thinking about doing that, this is a good pick for that as well. And overall, she's just a fantastic Tier 6 premium, one that's really fun to play, and a fantastic British battleship commander trainer. Unless you're going with a really like goofy fire build for your British battleships, you're going to be using a standard battleship build, and the Warspite is a great trainer for that because that's what works best with her as well. So she's still a really solid ship. I would give this ship a rating of an 8 out of 10. Her pros being her just absolutely fantastic 15-inch guns with their accuracy, her improved heal, and her improved damage con. The only real downside that she has is her armor scheme. While it is pretty protective, it's also pretty chunky at the same time too, so it's kind of a double-edged sword there. But in today's World of Warships, you know, you get chunked a bit more because, again, some of the gimmicky AP like SAP too. If you run into some large caliber SAP, which you can, being a tier 6 battleship, you can see the ships like the Lepanto, and that that hurts when you run across one of those. And her AA being the other big downside. It's not much to write home about. It doesn't really dissuade enemy ships from striking you, like, at all. And the Queen Elizabeth has an AA rating of 60, while the Warspite just, you know, has her old 50 AA rating. So those are the only two downsides, and really, they're not that bad for what the ship is and for what tier it's at. And again, when you're top tier in the ship, you are just, like, world is absolutely your oyster. Even if you have like some tiers, hey, yeah, even if you have some tier 7 ships in there, who cares? Who cares? You got the Warspite. You got 15-inch guns, 2.0 Sigma, maximum spurs are 204 meters. Like, who cares? The guns are fantastic. That's, again, just the main selling point of this ship. Oh, and her turret traverse. I can't forget to talk about that. The turret traverse is quite bad. You do have to pre-position your turrets a lot. As you've probably seen, the ship turns so fast, you absolutely leave your turrets in the dust. So you do have to be mindful about where your turrets are facing and when you're going to maneuver and what you want your turrets pointing at. You absolutely have to pre-position your turrets in this ship, like you do with any other battleship, but you have to be thinking 1 or 2 steps ahead because of that. Almost forgot to talk about that. But, I mean, really, for what you get, not really some bad trade-offs for what you get. But anyway, guys, I would absolutely recommend you guys pick this ship up. $27, not a bad deal for what you get. And they give the ship away quite a lot in giveaways and special offers for players like come back or to join the game. Fantastic ship for a new player too. We'll teach you the basics really, really easy, and it's quite a forgiving ship to play. I would of course recommend you of course grind to tier 6 before you pick the thing up. Like, don't just start the game to go grab a Warspite. Don't do that. But anyway, guys, hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, make sure to drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. We're on our way to 35,000 subs, and I cannot thank you guys enough for that. Hope you're all having a wonderful Thursday. Hope to catch you guys in the next one.